Hi, I'm Kalki, and you are watching the podcast of Kalki Presents My Indian Life, brought to you by the BBC World Service. I've really been enjoying all the feedback that you guys have given us. Thank you so much for your stories and your comments, and please keep them coming. This is the video version, but you can also find the audio version. You just need to download an audio streaming app or a podcast app and look for My Indian Life. Now let's listen to episode 9.
A warning, this episode of My Indian Life discusses issues about sex right from the start. If you feel you would be offended by this, you might be better off waiting for next week's episode.
I'm a 20-year-old woman. Is there any chance of becoming pregnant after watching porn videos?
In a conservative society like ours, where sex is a dirty word, where do people go when they need help?
He will never sneer. He will never be impatient. There will never be sort of an eye roll, sort of an invisible eye roll. He will not do that.
From the BBC World Service, this is My Indian Life, the podcast about what it means to be a young Indian in the 21st century. I'm Kalki Kekla, and this is the podcast that deals with the issues that many young people in India face on a daily basis. Episode 9, The Sexpert. First, a huge thanks to all those who have heard our podcast and have been in touch. I'll read out some of your responses and stories at the end of this episode, so keep listening. And please continue to tell me your own stories of being young and Indian in the 21st century. I could be mentioning them in future episodes. Our email address is myindianlife@bbc.com. And don't forget, please let us know what you think on social media using the hashtag MyIndianLife. We've been saying all along that this podcast is about young people, but the protagonist of our story today is a little bit older. He's 94 years old, but has a youthfulness about him. If you're wondering how did he make it to our list, then it's because he has a massive, massive fan following among the youth, like this 21-year-old college student.
He is extremely progressive, he is very open-minded, and for a 94-year-old, I think he is extremely sassy.
India is known as the land of the Kama Sutra, the ultimate sex manual. But sex today in our country is taboo, and sex education is a controversial subject. One man has done more than anyone else to promote discussions on the topic. He's Dr Mahinder Watsa. You may have already heard about him. He's a trained gynecologist who's famously known as the Sexpert. Dr. Watsa has been writing a daily sex advice column for the past 13 years in the Mumbai Mirror newspaper. It's called Ask the Sexpert, and it's become a cult hit. And the good doctor is known for his frank and witty responses. Here's an example of a question he's asked. Suppose two men have sex with the same woman who then gets pregnant. Which of the two could turn out to be the father of the child? His answer?
I suggest you write to the editor and inquire if there's a vacancy in the puzzle department of the newspaper.
And here's another.
I have a small penis. My astrologers advise me to pull it every day for 15 minutes while reciting a shloka. What should I do?
His answer?
If he was right, most men would have a penis hitting their knees.
Some of Dr. Watsa's work is much more demanding. He also gets letters from readers asking questions about serious subjects such as sexual assault and abuse. Dr. Watsa has been chronicling the sexual history of Indians for close to 70 years. When he began practicing as a gynecologist in the 1950s, the colonial British rule had just ended and India had become an independent country. Just a few years into his career, a woman's magazine approached him to write a Dear Doctor column. One of those advice columns. His brief was simple, to answer medical queries from parents about their children.
Whatever other magazines do, general health. Somebody is a whooping cough, or my child is not putting on weight, and the usual but general questions. There's nothing like anybody asking you sexology questions or psychiatric questions. That was a time when everything was very hush-hush.
It went on quite smoothly for a while, he says. But the letter soon began bringing news that was rather disturbing.
I started getting very odd letters, like girls who were about right from 15 onwards, and their marriage had been fixed. It's not love marriages, they were arranged marriages. But then they started confessing that, their uncle had come and raped them, or priest usually was the common one. Very serious letters would come. For example, something where they said that we would like to take our life, we are not going to get married. And so it was very tragic in a way.
In our culture, premarital sex is still frowned upon, and we place a lot of emphasis on virginity. In those days, society was even more conservative. So this was uncharted territory, and Dr. Watsa found himself unequipped to deal with such complex issues.
I started asking various people in organizations and all that, how to help them. And nobody could give me an answer for that, actually. That was my beginning of how I thought better start looking into this, how to manage this.
The problem remained in the back of his mind. It wasn't until the 1970s that he was able to do something about it. This was when he joined the Family Planning Association of India as an advisor and managed to convince them to start a program on sex education. The time was right. The population explosion had meant schools were beginning to discuss the issue, but there were still challenges to deal with.
First of all, we take the permission of the principal. Then we have to go to some government agency to take permission. Then we can do this. Then the question comes that you cannot force a child to be listening to you. So you have to tell the parents that we want to do this program and this is what it may cover. Some people say we don't want our child to listen. Few only, but not there are some such people. So to them we try to explain and this and that and get them to change their mind. Some people just don't change their mind. That's the end of the story.
Dr. Watsa has been on a lifelong mission to provide sex education. He gave up his practice in the early 1980s to devote himself full-time to counseling and education. The importance of sex education, he says, can't be emphasized enough, and the earlier it starts, the better it is.
We do get questions like this. For example, a baby having a bath goes on touching herself or himself. So sex education starts there, childhood. So the way then we tell them that, see, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just doing what is natural. So what we have to tell them is explain to them that what they need to do and what they don't need to do, and talk about good touch and bad touch,
Many of the problems, he says, occur from a lack of awareness, and that's what explains the thousands of letters and email queries he receives. Dr. Watsa has been writing advice columns for 50 years, but it was Ask the Sexpert that turned him into a celebrity. He began writing it at the age of 80 on the request of Meenal Baghel, editor of the Mumbai Mirror, when the paper was launched in 2005.
I've always kind of been surprised by the lack of any kind of educational information available on sex and sexuality. It's not available in schools, most schools. The few columns on sex-related queries that you saw in Indian publications, there would be a lot of nudge, wink, kind of thing. He will never sneer. He will never be impatient. There will never be sort of an eye roll, sort of an invisible eye roll. He will not do that. When the column first made its appearance in the paper, we got really angry readers writing in. So people wrote to me, what's this kind of a column doing in a family newspaper? Somebody said that no such person exists. All your questions are made up. I remember we printed a photograph of Dr. Watsa saying that he indeed does exist and this is what he looks like. And they're all, I like to stress this, they're all real letters because some of those questions are so fantastic that you can't make them up.
Dr. Watsa's sometimes funny answers have earned him a phenomenal following among the young people. There are WhatsApp groups that circulate his questions every day and fan sites with the best of Watsa lists.
Like the amount of questions, we were reading our questions and there's some really ridiculous.
At Mumbai's Jai Hind College, a group of 21-year-old students read from a list that claims to be a compilation of his wittiest answers. These young men and women describe Dr. Watsa as cool, sassy, witty, and progressive, and list the reasons why they like him so much.
Sex is considered kind of taboo in India. People don't want to talk about it. Mumbai Mirror is like the only window in which people actually discuss sex. How else do kids learn about it? Boys learn about it from porn. Girls read romance novels or 50 Shades of Grey.
We can't expect that understandability from our grandparents or even our parents, but this guy is amazing. So according to his columns, he might feel like someone in mid-30s or mid-40s, but considering that he's 90 plus is totally out of the world.
He's just solving the concern of youth and whatever the problems we are facing, which we can't share with our parents or teachers, or if there is any queries in future, I would love to write to him.
As soon as Dr. Watsa switches on the computer in his office, I can see several messages in his inbox waiting for his response.
I'm 18 years old. I have developed a habit of masturbation whenever I go to toilet. I can't stop it. I feel disgusting after doing this. Please suggest a remedy for this problem. I can't focus on my work due to this problem.
This is a very common question. All you have to do is to explain to him that anything that you may do within a norm, and don't make a habit out of it, it will help you to relax your mind, and that's all. Then you need not worry about any harm coming to your body. Whatever was there in the past is there in the present. Actually, the subjects are the same. But the fact of the matter is that it could be all solved if the persons who were younger were given some information about this thing. So that is where the programs are lacking.
In spite of the funny questions and the seemingly flippant answers, when Dr. Watsa talks, I realize there's much more serious issues at stake. He narrates troubling case studies, stories of incest, cheating spouses, exploitation and abuse. For those, he says, there are no witty answers.
How far do you go into the psychological aspects? I mean, you give them practical advice. Do you ever feel yourself being drawn to give more advice in terms of what's going on in their minds?
Yeah, always. When I counsel, I first start looking at that aspect. Number one, you try to explain to them your body has nothing wrong. There's something else which is bothering you. So tell me what is bothering you.
And do they often tell you?
Yeah, they do.
What kind of issues?
Simple things also occur and can really cause terrible anxiety and depression to that person. Some people who come, they're so depressed. They are already gone to psychiatrists who have given them a lot of anti-psychiatric medicines. So to deal with that sort of person is very difficult.
Looking back, now you've been doing this for some 70 years.
What has changed is the environment. Like, for example, the methodology. Girls are going out because they know that if they have sex without a condom, they can take an eye pill. But the ones who get completely nuts is those who had no knowledge about this e-pill or whatever it is.
Yeah, I suppose that already from the examples in whatever I've seen, that the younger generation of women are talking about it more openly.
What was happening was that women never came to the clinic. It was the husband who came, but who sent them is the wife.
Yeah.
The wife who's pushed them, go and do something about it. So that is now changed. They, number one, they either come with them or they don't come, but they ring you up and say, my husband got this, that and all, and he's coming to see you.
How do you keep the morality out of it completely? What do you do?
You do get people who are 40s and 50s and all, who are married also with kids and having an affair outside. And they are quite happy together. And they are asking now, what shall we do? That's a complicated question to answer.
Yeah, what would you say?
I said it's for you to consider. You are putting yourself in a position where a lot of things could happen to you. For example, you will be discovered. That's how I leave it to them. Is there any other way?
Living in a society like ours, where it really matters what the neighbors think, it's hard to talk about issues of sex and sexuality openly. The humor, he says, is not only to make a joke, it's also to make a point about the importance of consent or gender equality or aspects of health and hygiene. Even at 94, he continues to see patients and is not ready to retire. Right now, I can only see 2 patients a day, he says. I could see more if I was more agile. When people start unburdening themselves, he lends them a sympathetic ear. When people share their shame, their private anguish with him in their letters, he writes back in a non-judgmental way. Being privy to the deepest, darkest secrets and fears of thousands of men and women is not easy. And that's what makes Dr. Watsa's work so much more valuable.
Hi everyone, I'm actually coming to you today from in the Nilgiri Mountains, where it's bright and sunny and there are lots of birds chirping, so don't mind them. We just heard Dr. Watsa's story. I really can't believe it's been the 9th episode of My Indian Life. 9 already. And now we just have 3 more to go in this first season. I stress the word first because I really do want to be back, but I need your help. Please continue to send us your own stories of being a young adult and Indian in the 21st century. And you never know, there might be an episode in season 2 on you. Thank you to all who have been in touch via our email address and on social media. Since we featured the story of Insya Dariwala, who is a survivor of child sex abuse, many of you have written to us with your own accounts of abuse. Here is part of an email we got from a man who is now 42. He writes, I was sexually abused when I was about 5 or 6 years old. I never told anyone at the time because my abuser used to scare me. This is the first time I've opened up about it. I still feel that rage in me. I don't know what I will do if I ever meet that person again. And this is from another one of our listeners. Growing up, I was abused by my own brother among other people. So this story really hit home. I've done a lot of work with a therapist and gone through PTSD treatments, and I'm in a better place. Parents need to be educated about the lasting impact these experiences have on children's lives, personalities, self-esteem, and the choices they make in life. And Amit emailed to say, I am Anglo-Indian and had quite a liberal upbringing. This made it hard to relate to circumstances people faced around me while growing up. I have 2 young daughters, and through their imperfections, they are perfect to me. My hope for them is to navigate through this dangerous but exciting world, mostly happy, but always inspired. Thanks for sharing your stories with us. Please send them to us. Email at myindianlife@bbc.com. Next time on Kalki Presents My Indian Life from the BBC World Service is a story of ice and determination, broken bones and Olympic dreams. How far would you go to fulfill your sporting ambitions? And after that, we are also going to have 2 special episodes of My Indian Life live that I've recorded in front of an audience of some very lively students in Delhi and Mumbai. That's all to come. Thanks for listening.